The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Yep. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Tuesday. No, I'm sorry. Today is Thursday. Does it even matter what day of the week it is, to be honest with you? It's a day. April 2nd, 2020. Thanks so much for joining us. 6.6 million people filed for unemployment claims. And that was this last week alone. The week prior to that, 3.3 million filed for unemployment claims. 10 million, 9.9, but 10 million. And those, mind you, are just the successful claims, the successful applicants, meaning that they're probably, I don't know, whatever percentage get denied. More people without insurance today, without income today, without the ability probably to pay their rent, because everyone knows that the majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, no matter what income bracket you're in. You're living paycheck to paycheck because that's how our society has been structured. This is not good news, to state the obvious. The unbelievable thing here is that in the face of unprecedented times, our system, our leaders, our institutions continue to behave as if it's politics as usual. That's the part that's striking. I can't say that it's surprising, but it's striking. The ability to look at, I mean, we're headed towards this is the second Great Depression. We're headed towards the second Great Depression. And while the Fed is taking unprecedented steps to make sure that the markets are okay, no one, not Democrat nor Republican, no one is taking unprecedented steps to make sure that the people are okay. And it has to be noted, the level of, like, these people are really confident in our ability as the working class and as the newly unemployed and just the people in general, our ability to put up with their BS. Because I would be staggeringly terrified of 10 million newly unemployed, uninsured, no less, at the beginning of a pandemic, people entering into the unemployment market, or the reality rather of unemployment. I would be terrified as a political leader of not even history looking back at me and saying, oh, I was a failure, but rather the people in the present looking at me and saying, I'm a failure, therefore I am the problem, therefore I need to be gotten rid of. And I think it is irresponsible for us to discuss this without being very direct. The people can only take so much. Listen, we're not talking about people being radicalized because they listen to my show. Right. I'm not much of a radical myself, but people like to fancy me to be a rabble rouser. Okay, fine. No, there's nothing that I could say that is going to put them on edge more than reality. Reality says that in the face of a health pandemic, the likes of which we have not seen since the Spanish flu. Spanish flu took 695,000 American lives. This COVID-19 is poised to take, on the low end, 240,000 American lives, upwards of 2 million plus. So we are either going to be in the range of the Spanish flu or supersede the casualties of the Spanish flu. So in the beginning of a pandemic, they have lost their jobs, their health care, their ability to feed their kids, their ability to pay rent. I mean, there's nothing more radicalizing than a mother or a father realizing that the entire system around them has failed them. And to add insult to injury, your politicians are doing the same thing they would have done Donald Trump as being the moron that he would have been, regardless of of this pandemic or not. Joe Biden is out here, trying to avoid questions about Medicare for all when literally it is a case in point. This is like the evidence is, what's the saying? Reality is endorsing Bernie Sanders. That's what we're up against. Reality has said that people should not have their health care tied to their employment, because when the markets crash, people lose their health care. And when the markets crash because of a pandemic, people lose their jobs, losing their health care in a pandemic. And now they don't even know, like, if they can go to the hospital. And then you have the pile-on effect, right? The people that we discussed yesterday, people who are suffering from cancer or whatever the case may be, and now they no longer have access. And it will honestly just take the goodwill of their providers to decide whether or not they're going to keep giving them the chemotherapy that they need. That's the new reality for millions of people across this country. Those are just the individuals. I'm sorry, we're talking about entire households. We're facing unprecedented times, and we're being led by people who feel as though they can keep going as if politics as usual is going to be sufficient to get us out of this crisis, as well as politics as usual not being the very thing that's going to add the salt to the injury, salt to the wound, the insult to the injury, right? The politics as usual, looking at television, watching Donald Trump be a moron, looking at the television, watching Nancy Pelosi, or you're not even seeing Nancy Pelosi. You're not seeing the Democratic opposition. The best that you're seeing is coming from Bernie Sanders. And when you hear Joe Biden, you hear him making excuses for why, Medicare for all isn't the answer. Listen, there's nothing that I could say or would try to say. If anything, I would try to convince the people that everything is going to be all right and we just need to hang in there because, in desperate times, you have to have some modicum of hope. But that's not going to fly right now. People aren't going to listen to somebody trying to tell them everything is going to be okay when they got their last paycheck and they don't know how they're going to feed their kids. What I'm saying, not too subtly, is the fact that this system is not going to survive. America is on the precipice of collapse if we do not act accordingly on behalf of the people. If we don't do for the people what we did for the markets, then this entire system is going to collapse right before us, not just because of COVID-19, but also because of the unprecedented amount of unemployment we're getting ready to go into. I got a jam-packed show for you today. My friends, Professor Matt Sinkowitz and Max Inhofe, they're joining me. They did a couple of interviews and some content that I'm going to share throughout the show. But there's just so many things that happened overnight. I have to share a story out of, I'm not going to get into too many details, but a church that I served at for many years, it looks like they may have a cluster. And it's a cluster of COVID-19 patients. And then you have schools in Montgomery, Alabama that are trying to make teachers come back Monday, like 4 days from today, Monday. They're trying to make teachers come back to work in the middle of at the beginning of a pandemic. So there's a lot to cover. Today's show is going to be probably longer than usual, but buckle up. There's a lot to discuss, and we'll get to as much of it as we possibly can. Thank you to all of the let me do it properly. Patron party coming right up.
Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show.
And here we go. Very special thank you and welcome to all of our newest patrons. Very special thank you to Christopher Z. Thank you for becoming a patron. Benjamin Peterson, thank you for becoming a patron. Betty Hagler, thank you for becoming a patron. Peter Pollard, thank you, sir. I see you. Thank you for becoming a patron. Very special welcome and thank you to David Atkinson. Thank you for becoming a patron. Benjamin Michael. There's two Benjamins in one day. Thank you for becoming a patron. Kevin Lilly. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. And John Patrick Cohn. Thank you for becoming a patron. And listen, very special thank you to everyone. All of the patrons who could not renew. I still want to thank you for everything that you've done. I'm not even going to ask anyone to go to Patreon today because I just want to take a minute to thank you for what you have already done at the very difficult times. And I understand a lot of people cannot afford that. I mean, we just talked about 10 million people losing their jobs. I'm guaranteeing some of those people were in my audience. And so I just want to thank you for being a patron up until this point. I will promise to give you as much content. If I could just make, if I could give access to all of the old patrons to all the patron content, I would. Patreon does not give us that option. They really should. And I'm going to start asking them to do that simply because I want to reward the people who have been supporting me even when you can't. Matter of fact, I think I'll make a general. Here's what we'll do. I'm going to make a general password for all of my old patrons, and I'm going to email it to you so that you can continue to get access to patreon.com. All right. Now, for everyone else, go to patreon.com/BPD show and get access to all of the bonus stuff so that you don't have to hear raggedy commercials like you're getting ready to hear right now. Okay. One last thing. One quick thing before I toss it over to Professor Sinkowitz. Check this out. Bernie Sanders needs to stay in this race so long as he's advocating for the very things that we need to survive this pandemic. I don't care because here's the thing. We absolutely are not going to survive this as a country unless we have universal basic income. Every household needs to be bringing in at least $2,000 to $4,000 a month, depending on the size of the household. Probably more, but we'll start there, depending on the size of the household, through the duration of this pandemic. That's what we need to survive as well, not individually, but collectively as a nation. And he's advocating for that. Who else is advocating for that? I'll wait. Who else is advocating for a nationalized healthcare or Medicare for all system? Who's advocating for it? Because that's what we need right now more than ever before. And we don't need a long drawn out process. Like, we honestly need Donald Trump to go ahead and just institute Medicare for all, nationalize some key components of our healthcare system. But who's advocating for it if not if not Bernie Sanders? Nobody. Who else is out here advocating for a moratorium on evictions and rent through the duration of this crisis? Literally no one else. And since he is the only person who is advocating for the very things that we need to survive, this is not hyperbole. This is not any kind of projection in terms of like what's going to happen in the future. This is literally what's happening right now. Right now, there are 10 million more individuals representing how many millions of people because of how many people in their households. Like for every person that lost their job, there's probably another person who's lost their insurance. So who is advocating for what we need right now to survive as a nation as well as individually? Nobody but Bernie Sanders. And again, I want to give the caveat at this point. This has nothing to do with love for Bernie Sanders. Because I would support Donald Trump at this point if he would turn around and do the things that we need to survive. If Donald Trump turned around and said, okay, we're going to institute a universal basic income. Okay, we're going to put a moratorium on rent and evictions. Period. Until this is over, we're going to nationalize some key components of our healthcare industry, and we're going to make sure that everyone is universally covered. Y'all be mad at me. I wouldn't put on a "Make America Great Again" hat or anything like that, but I sure as hell would be grateful and thankful and talk about it. So it's got nothing to do with a person or a personality or an individual. It has everything to do with policies that we need to survive this crisis individually as well as collectively. And there's literally only one candidate. Joe Biden is playing politics as usual. Donald Trump is playing politics as usual. The nation needs the policies that Bernie Sanders is advocating for. And so for that purpose, I think he should stay his butt right into this in this campaign. Bump what you heard. I don't care about, we need to solidify the base. Joe Biden. Nobody's excited about Joe Biden anyway. All All right, let's do a quick transition. Check out my friends here, Professor Sinkowitz and Max Inhofe, with their interview.
Today is Thursday, April 2nd, and you are listening to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Ben is taking a well-deserved break, and I'm here, Professor Matt Sinkowitz, with Max Inhofe. Max, how are you?
Good. Yeah, so I guess I'm just thinking about how the blame game is going, whose fault it is about like coronavirus, and how it's kind of gone from being about, it's not a problem, Republicans and Trump especially saying, it's not a problem, moving in the direction of it's China's fault. China did this to us, it's their fault, maybe China should have to pay us like reparations of some kind. And it's just been kind of an interesting shift to me because you can kind of see the logic there, but at the same time, when you kind of pick at it, it totally falls apart.
Well, right, there's a basic logic, right? The thing has an origin, and it seems that origin is China, and there's every reason to believe that, the Chinese were not forthcoming with information going into the last, ever since the winter. I think that's fair, and I think it's fair to, it's really not a strictly China-facing thing, but to consider what our mechanisms are for sharing crucial medical information across borders. That's true. However, none of that explains the utterly imbecilic response and sort of actively self-destructive response that we have created here, right? If somebody let a lion loose in the town, that person would be responsible. But if we decided to then go play a baseball game when we knew that, right, we would also have a certain amount of responsibility. So is that what you're seeing in terms of, of course you could make a story where the origin matters and we could share information, but our response has not shown that we were responsible either, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think that there's plenty to criticize in the Chinese response, and I think a lot of Chinese would share those criticisms. There were some doctors who were sounding alarm bells, and the Chinese government seemed to kind of put the clamps down on them and tell them oh, stop talking about this. So they definitely didn't do a good job handling the situation, but watching the United States handle it honestly just makes what they did look better. So I can't say. It's just kind of an interesting period of time in which this is happening. People are becoming more and more cognizant of the rise of China, and China is emerging as a strategic threat in the minds of the people who were looking for another war to fight already.
I think that's right. I mean, also there is the very real possibility that China, emerges from this faster and therefore in a position of strength in sort of the global capital market, and gains a comparative advantage, which is not a conspiracy theory. I'm spouting just our utter inability to respond to this thing has, in conjunction with the delayed sort of time frame in which it's hitting us. I mean, for sure, people who are interested in playing those games are going to want to blame China. I'm not sure what help blaming China does, except on the immediate domestic level, right? To me, it seems like it's essentially a Republican play in some ways to remove blame from the utterly floundering, feckless response from the Trump administration, but also the maintenance of this fully, to my mind, bizarre continuing partisan divide where Republican governors in red states are still unable to get people to take this seriously. It's just look over there, right? I mean, you can look at the states that are doing very little, and this is such a clear partisan element to it on, of course, a virus which has no interest in distinguishing partisans, I guess, except insofar as Republicans are older and are in higher risk groups. I don't know. It's confounding. What do you think? What do you think the play is here?
I mean, it's also important to mention that, rising hate crimes against Asian Americans, people wearing masks. Which
it turns out we should probably be doing. It looks like the CDC is going in that direction. It's going to be telling us all to wear masks in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, to me, masks just kind of makes sense. I know this is changing subject slightly, but like masks just make sense from like a social solidarity level. It shows to other people that you are taking this seriously, and we also know that since you can be asymptomatic and also spread the virus.
Yeah, we should all
wearing a mask. Yeah, wearing a mask will actually stop you from spreading that virus to other people. So
yeah. No, I agree. I'm connecting them, and maybe falsely, but I don't know if it's a provocative claim or not, that there will be resistance by people. There will be let's say the CDC does soon come out and say that we should all, when we can get masks, which is a whole other terrible issue, that we should all be wearing it. I don't doubt that that the mask wearing phenomenon's association with China will be a reason for some people not to wear them. Right, I think that is a sad but almost certain reality that does bring the two ideas together.
Yeah, I saw an article that was published yesterday in like National Review or one of these conservative outlets that was about that was like quoting the Austrian chancellor, this like far right dude, about how like wearing masks is like an anti-Western thing. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you think? Yeah, so there definitely will be some like cultural resistance to it.
Yeah, that is wrapped in race, right? Yeah.
Yes. No, I see it as like this American exceptionalism. Like we don't need to do what those people do because like we are so much better at handling these things.
I mean, I think that's right, and I think the level of asininity there is off the charts. I do think when it comes to masks, there's some concern that people use them properly, and there's a major concern that the right people need to get them first, right? The people who are in the most danger and most likely to be infected or infect others. But yeah, I mean, look, this is one of those everything's political moments, right? Like there's absolutely no reason that anything other than the best chance of not spreading this disease should be in play, but I very much do believe, and you see it in this blame China sort of response, these political elements are going to be coming into this life or death stuff in new ways. It's already there, but the mask will just be another place for them.
Everybody clap your hands. So yes, I am supposed to be taking today off, but but there's just so much that happened overnight. So I got a phone call from friends in South Florida at a church that I spent, I don't know, 10 years of my life working at. And I was a business administrator there, as well as a musician, the minister of music, the lead musician there. And it sounds as though there's an outbreak that happened there. And several members have passed away, and many more are in the hospital. I'm only bringing this up because I think, a couple things. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has ordered a shelter-in-place, has given a shelter-in-place order for the state of Florida, but they did not include churches. They consider churches to be essential businesses, essential services. And so the only reason I'm bringing this up, because otherwise, I know people could do some quick Googling and figure out exactly the church that I'm talking about. I'm not trying to put the church on blast whatsoever. It just happens. It happens. Right. People, if you didn't stop your services soon. I mean, listen, South Florida is like Atlanta. South Florida is a hub of people, international travel, just like Atlanta. And the coronavirus was here in Atlanta before it was everywhere, before it was in many other places. And so if those people happen to come to your church, well, then, yeah, that happens. But the fact that Ron DeSantis has given permission to churches to remain open, I think people just need to understand how real this is, and God is not protecting you while you're doing the opposite of what all the doctors and scientists are telling you to do. This kind of goes along with what Professor Sinkowitz and Max were just talking about in terms of like this repudiation, this resistance against the best practices that are being forwarded by the government. Well, not in the government, but just like we're just kind of as a community are generating some best practices because we really cannot depend on the government to do so. And this reticence, this resistance, this kind of quasi-libertarian leaning to say, oh, I reject that, I'm going to go to church anyway. and then to tell your members that, oh, God is going to protect you. No, he's not. No, he literally is not. You're going to die. Okay. You're going to die, and God is going to accept you into heaven and tell you how stupid you were for trying to go to church in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, I know the people who died at that church. I know the people who are in the hospital right now fighting for their lives. 13 members fighting for their lives. 2 members passed away already. I know them. I know them by name. So for anyone who believes that Jesus is going to save you from your stupidity, I need you to think the again. I don't care. See, it's this, whatever it is that hang on, let me edit that profanity real quick. Okay, it's been edited. All right. It's something that goes on in the minds of conservatives, generally speaking, but also there's this vein of thought that goes into religiosity. Like, even if you're not necessarily a conservative religious person, like this was a black church. Like I didn't attend an evangelical church. I attended a black church where we preached the black liberation theology, right? Where we protested, where we had rallies. And, I think in the case of this church, they just didn't shut down soon enough. Right. And we're talking about, that first week of March really was the deciding factor. If you had service on the first week of March, it's a good chance that you expose your congregants to it. Right. But not everybody understood the magnitude of what was happening in the first week of March, which is a systemic failing of our government. Our government should have had us all on high alert immediately. But now people who are making this decision now, it's more of a political decision. It is a political decision to reject what the government is saying, which is hilarious because it is a Republican-led government at this point. Right? This is the dichotomy. This is the psychopathy. It's not a dichotomy. It's a psychopathy that we've seen a lot of times where they're rebelling against the very government that they installed. You're rebelling against the best practices that even your Donald Trump is telling you to do. But it's this incessant desire and need to say, oh, we're protesting we want our liberties. Well, yeah, you can't have many liberties when you're dead. And I'm sorry, but the proof is in the pudding. Jesus is not saving you from this virus, not by you going to church and praying. All the holy oil and holy water and falling down and, laying on of hands will not save you from your stupidity to go out. And I actually, I'm gonna do you one better. You need a sermon. Here's a sermon. Let me give you a sermon. Here's what the Bible says. Isaiah 26:20. Go, my people, enter your rooms, shut the doors behind you, hide yourselves for a little while until his wrath has passed by. There you go. You want to buy a biblical justification for you to stop going to church for a minute? There it is. But I do know it is a political rejection. And so once we get into the realm of politics and it becomes a partisan issue, it becomes hyper partisan, people will gladly accept death in order to own the libs.
What a blog saying, I don't really know. I'm pretty busy and I don't know where to go to find them. But Matt's going to ask his friend Josh, and Josh is going to tell you about blogs. What blogs are saying with Josh Moss.
Also with Max Thunder.
I am joined by my two very special guests. We've got Josh Moss, comedian in New York. Hey Josh, how are you?
I'm good.
And
how are you guys?
I'm all right. I've also got Max Thunder on the line. Max, you there?
Hey, still here.
Very nice. So Josh, you're here for What Blogs Are Saying. I'm going to start, as we normally do, by dipping into the mailbag. I've got an email here from Max in Jamaica Plain. Max wants to know, Josh, what are blogs saying during these dark times?
All right. Well, so blogs are saying, as you know, we all know who Jared Kushner is. Apparently, it got revealed that he and his brother have a partnership called Brothers First, Partners Second. and they each share of any venture they have. They put into this entity called, and they split profits 50-50. But they're talking about it specifically because the Kushners were the ones who developed the website that they're going to use to disperse funds to people who are businesses that are broke.
Right. So this is a conflict of interest claim. I would think is the idea.
Yes, but the great thing about them is there's no conflict of interest between them. So it's kind of there's the corruption on the first level, but then on the second level, it's actually a heartwarming story of corruption bringing brothers together. So,
right. I mean, really, like any good mob story, right? Like, on the one hand, they're wreaking destruction and destroying the world. On the other hand, like, they're such a close family. No.
Oh yeah. On the other hand, through the corruption, they're still brothers first.
Yeah, brothers first. It's called brothers first. That is cute. Wow. Okay. Very good. I
thought it was like their marriage partners when you first brought it up.
No. That would be, that's probably coming.
Oh boy. Well, yes. Right. Another level of intertwined corruption. All right. So we're a fully corrupt society, and even in the moment of crisis, or especially in the moment of crisis. What else are blogs saying?
Well, so obviously, this is Andrew Cuomo has. He's making a name for himself.
Yes, the next president of the United States, Andrew Cuomo.
Yes, the second Italian president, as they say. Anyway, there's a lot of memes on blogs saying how he's attractive, and there are close-ups of his chest, and they're doing a lot of close-ups of his chest.
Yeah.
And apparently, when he's giving the press conference, his nipples get hard. So there is some thought that this is turning him on.
He's aroused. Now, I mean, a temperature problem would be another thesis, correct?
Well, it could be a temperature problem. I mean, you could go the temperature argument. I'll be honest, most blogs have not gone that way. They're going with the arousal argument.
Yeah, well, I mean, the arousal of his the sort of the sense of power, right? The erotics of attention, this kind of thing. Okay. So blogs are saying that Andrew Cuomo is aroused by talking about the death of tens of thousands of people. Excellent. What else we got, Josh?
This is from Trucker Blogs World. Apparently, a lot of truckers are finding it hard to eat on the road because so many things are closed.
Sure, yeah.
And it's a big deal. We don't want our truckers going hungry.
No, well, that's a serious labor issue. I mean, that really, it actually is. And trucking can be a dangerous job also, right? I mean, long hours, confined space, and I guess that these are one of these many knock-on effects of the closures and the crisis that we have.
It's the supply chain of the supply chain. You need the truckers. You need truckers, but truckers need food.
I will say that it's a serious issue, and one that, I mean, I guess you have to sort of plan for it in the same way that you plan for emergency medical services, right? I mean, we need these things to move across the country. Feeding truckers in this current moment is A, something I hadn't thought about, and B, a very serious concern, right? If the rest of us want to be fed, then truckers need to be fed, and we need to sort of treat that as a crisis point. I think that's very compelling.
All right, one last segment before we kick it over to the Patrons Only episode. You can get access to the Patrons Only episode at patreon.com/the BPD show. It is the condescension. It's the condescending gaze people have towards their labor force that was really driving a lot of, well, let me give you what I'm talking about. Montgomery Public Schools, Montgomery, Alabama. They are calling for their teachers to go back to work on April 6th, which is Monday. Students will remain at home. Teachers will take shifts and come in small groups, according to a memo that was released yesterday. It's the tone in the memo. So a couple of things about it. Students are at home, and for the most part, parents are teaching their kids. For those of us who are lucky to be at home with them and have the capacity and the time to actually teach our kids. What teachers are mainly doing, and no offense to any teachers, at least in this county here in Atlanta, teachers are just dumping a whole bunch of work on us, which is fine. Cool. That's cool. I don't have any problem with somebody going home and just chilling the hell out until this virus is passed. But apparently, the school board of Montgomery Public Schools, they do have a problem with it. Because this is the language that they used in their letter, in their memo that they sent out to all of their employees. This is what they said. They said, quote, because employees are being compensated, working remotely means that you must be available. Okay, that's fair. If needed during regular hours, and you must complete assigned tasks while working away from your school location. Teachers should be in contact with parents, giving them guidance as to how instructions and assessments will be delivered and the deadlines for all the activities. Good. That's all good. This is the line that got me right here. Remember, we are not on vacation. I'm sorry, what? So part of this call for teachers to come back to schools in Montgomery Public Schools, and I'm sure this might be replicating itself across the country, but I'm hoping that it's not. Because if you're so concerned about people thinking that they are on vacation in the middle of them trying to survive a pandemic, that means that you have this condescending gaze towards labor that's going to get people killed. There's literally nothing that teachers can't do remotely when their students are remote. Right? We're not talking about, and thank God we're not talking about students going back to school, but they're bringing teachers and administrators back to school because they can't imagine having teachers not working while they're collecting a check, like people who make money off of capital gains. Instead of allowing teachers to remain at home and to hold them accountable remotely, they're insisting that teachers come back and work in cycles just so that they can control the labor force. That's the thing. Just so that they can control the labor force and give somebody, like, my question is, who needs this assurance? Who's so concerned that teachers are going to have some free time where they're at home chilling, drinking mimosas, right? During the beginning of a pandemic. So instead of allowing the possibility that some teachers will take advantage of the system, you're now exposing all of the teachers to potential health hazards to this pandemic. There's a level of, it's condescension. And that's, I know I've said it, but I got to say it again. If you cannot handle somebody being at home and getting this little pittance of a paycheck that teachers get in the first place, so much so that you're going to force them to come back to these public places when the rest of the world is quarantining, then something tells me you have a problem with the labor force, and you have a problem with labor. You have a problem with writing checks to people for work in the first place. And that is the spirit of America. Do you see all across the country? All across the country, they're making working people go through hurdles that executives don't have to go through. Executives sit at home and collect their checks anyway. They collect their dividends anyway, their capital gains anyway. But somebody who's making $38,000 a year, you're so concerned about that $38,000 a year check that you're going to make them come back outside of a quarantine into a public place where they could be potentially exposed to a deadly virus? All right, that's my music. Special thanks to Professor Sinkowitz, Max Inhofe, and Josh telling us what the blogs are saying. Special thank you to all of you who support the show. Patrons, stay tuned past the music. You know the drill. Twice the content after the music. For everyone else, if you want to access patreon.com/the BPD show. If not, I will see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.